What's going on, gamers? We got some RE9 PS5 Pro, stunning footage here by Digital Foundry in 4K. We got PS5 and we got Series X, and we got some breakdowns here by seeing the difference. You know, Capcom's been on fire lately. Like, everything they do is amazing. Now, they got their main line being the highest it has been in a while, like over 20 years. They've just been making improvements in every game they do. I love Capcom, and they show you how to optimize stuff too. Switch 2 is obviously going to be getting its own video, which I think is good. So here we're going to get a showdown between the PS5 Pro, the PS5, and the Series X. But the interesting thing here is that the PS5 Pro is now starting to show a gap of difference between the PlayStation 5 and the Series X, and this is what a lot of people wanted to see. I can't wait for PSSR 2 to come out. You're going to see an even bigger difference. So let me know what you guys think. It is definitely going to be interesting here. This game looks absolutely amazing. And yeah, let's go. I'm going to get off the camera, obviously, so we can see all the details. I got theater mode up. Let me know what you guys think. It's good seeing that the PS5 Pro is showing its difference now. Definitely with ray tracing.
But it also highlights another interesting feature of the PS5 Pro version. It has two modes. That's right, in the options menu, it's possible to disable the game's ray tracing features entirely, which in turn enables a true 120Hz mode that prioritizes high frame rates. Now, we'll talk about frame rates later, but the key here is that the resolution remains roughly the same, around 1080p, yet the perceptible image quality is much worse. So it would seem that the upsampler I mentioned earlier is simply disabled in this mode. Take a look at this City College Critters sign. Using the ray tracing on setting, the text is very clear and highly legible. It's somewhat blurry in the 120Hz mode, but look below it, you can read no standing anytime on the left here, but the right side is so blurry you cannot read it at all. Both count just above 1080p, yet there's a huge difference. Or how about the scene during the introduction? Look at the pillars here on the right. They're completely distorted in the 120Hz side. In fact, it kind of suggests that they're using AMD's FSR1 here, which would explain a lot about the image quality. So we have FSR1 versus some sort of temporal upsampler. So by disabling ray tracing, you give up a lot of image quality in exchange for a higher frame rate.
Not worth it.
But of course, as the name implies, you also lose ray tracing, both the lighting and reflections. And even this very first scene immediately shows a noticeable difference. The glass of this office building, for instance, just uses a cube map in the 120Hz mode. It looks far more realistic with RT reflections, right? You also lose things like this, the flashlight reflecting in the glass here. Without ray tracing, you don't see this at all. Though they do try to simulate this on opaque surfaces using SSR, but when anything occludes it, it can look a little bit messy like this. Conversely, the effect here is a little more subtle with ray tracing enabled, but it's more natural and doesn't have these occlusion issues. Honestly, the difference between ray tracing enabled and ray tracing disabled isn't gigantic throughout the game. It still looks good either way, but it definitely adds additional nuance to the image in addition to the vastly superior image quality, making it the best way to play it.
So you see what he's saying there, guys. Like, that was the area where they caught stuff. But if you're playing throughout the game, you're going to get your 120 frames. But the fact that they have 120 frames mode on the Pro for a next-gen game that just launched just shows how good Capcom is at doing things. And they can obviously optimize this more over time, and PSSR 2 will make this even better. But the fact that they got the 60 frames ray tracing mode going again, kind of like Ghost, is absolutely amazing. This is what separates the Pro from the PS5 and the Series X.
Still, and this is something we'll get into in our next video, the visual scaling in this game is remarkable. Even when you remove key features such as the ray tracing, the resulting visuals are simply beautiful. So while the RT features do enhance the experience, it still looks incredible without it, making the 120Hz mode perhaps more interesting. But let's switch back to the quality mode, and if we jump back into the flow of the introduction, we're finally introduced to Leon via this gorgeous scene. The rain-swept train yard is stunning to behold on its own, but then we cut to Leon himself, and yeah, the level of detail here is just incredible. Anyone playing this game can look at the character models and say, yeah, that looks really detailed, but there's a lot of cool stuff happening here as well. Capcom's art team has been at the top of the industry for years, and RE9 is a masterclass in why. Every stitch of clothing, every secondary animation, subtle shift in the skin shading or eye refraction, It's all built with an obsessive level of craftsmanship. Their characters have looked real for a long time, but here they're pushing realism even further in smart, targeted ways. Take the strand-based system introduced in RE4, used for hair. This time there's no toggle, it's simply on, and it looks leagues better. In Resident Evil 4, lighting sometimes struggled to integrate the hair naturally into the scene, remember? In RE9 that issue is gone, the hair is properly lit, properly shaded, and moves with a physicality that really sells the illusion completely. It's superb work. Leon's coat is another standout. The fur lining around the collar looks phenomenal, with individual fibers catching light in a way that feels tactile. Everything is lit and shaded expertly. Clothing materials across the board are so impressive. Leather.
Yeah, I mean, guys, look at this. This looks absolutely incredible. Look at this model. I see what he means. Like, definitely on the Pro, because this is the Pro version. Damn, it looks good.
Looks like leather, while fabric looks like fabric. His shirt here has a different sheen and weave compared to his jacket, for instance. Buttons have visible thread work if you look closely. Buckles and hooks are rounded, worn, and metallic, not just textured, but believable. Even his shoes and pants and everything, absurdly detailed. Honestly, when you look back at the most recent movie, Resident Evil Death Island, I honestly think the in-game model kinda looks better. Yeah, technically the CGI still has more geometry in it, but it's amazing we've reached the point where a real-time rendered model can actually compete with a pre-rendered film. Of course, Grace, the other main character, receives the same level of attention. Her hair rendering is immaculate, and the subsurface scattering on her skin, like this close-up of the keyboard, is used to great effect. During the escape sequence, something that was in the demo if you recall, look into her eyes, the individual lashes, the tear film along the lower lid. It's borderline ridiculous how much detail is packed in if you take a chance to look closely. It's no surprise Capcom has included a model viewer in this game. There's so much detail that it's almost hard to appreciate while playing. But it's not just the main cast either. Even background characters, the ones you'd expect to be a slightly lower priority, are rendered with surprising fidelity. Grace's boss, for instance, looks excellent, right? But check out this scene. If you pause the footage, you'll spot tiny little threads on his jacket. I noticed this during the cutscene. Now, if we jump over to the model viewer, take a look. Those threads are a ridiculously detailed part of the model. It's this attention to detail that really stands out. Honestly, I'd argue that what we're looking at here are possibly the best character models I've ever seen in a shipping video game. They're that good. Naturally, cutscenes benefit from full performance capture as well. The extras menu shows the process. Facial rigs for micro expressions, full body capture for movement. It all feeds into the final result and it looks excellent. Of course, the in-game animations are great too, and you can experience them both in first or third person. By default, the game has Grace playing out in first person with Leon playing out in third person due to his more action-heavy scenes. But you can mix and match or just do both in first or third person. So the characters then, very detailed, but it doesn't stop with them. Objects and props receive the same treatment. The Porsche collaboration, for instance, I have to mention this. Naturally, the team spent a lot of time modeling out this car. The headlights, the wheels, the polished surfaces, even the dashboard here. It's all rendered with a precision that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a studio that doesn't specialize in vehicles. Although it must be said, the vehicles in this game are probably the best Capcom's done in a game like this. The Hamilton partnership, then, can also be observed here with the watch that Leon's wearing. It's gorgeous. The shadows, the tiny little mechanical components, the metal crown, the texture of the band, it all looks beautiful. Some people balk at these sort of tie-ins with real products, but I think it actually adds a little bit of weight to the world and sort of grounds everything. But of course there's more. Overall environmental detail is super impressive here. Take this storefront. The neon sign draws your eye, right? But look closely and you'll see fully modeled bottles and objects inside each window with proper rounding and material definition. The
Yeah, I mean, this is where you realize Capcom sets itself apart from others. And this is the type of game they got running 60 frames per second on the Switch too. A game that is setting the technology standards right now for optimization and next gen. As you see with the details and models, this is what I mean. Capcom just shows you how lazy other people are and just how they're just on another level.
glass fogs up in places as rain streaks across it, a subtle but effective touch. Spin around then, we get another view of the street, this time at night of course, complete with realistically modeled cars. This Crown Victoria style vehicle really caught my eye, it's very well done. One weird thing about this scene though, most of the scenes in this game leverage ray trace reflections here on the PS5 Pro, right? But for whatever reason, this one scene out on the street still uses a lot of SSR for the water reflections. Probably a performance optimization, but interesting nonetheless, because ray trace lighting is still enabled. You can see it with how this sign renders differently between the two modes. But alright, let's move inside the hospital area now. The interior here is obviously less busy compared to what we were just looking at, but there's still a ton of small objects and clutter scattered about each room, and all of them are rendered with convincing materials. The result is a world that not only matches but often surpasses the pre-rendered backgrounds from the series' golden era. It specifically reminds me of the RE remake style of games, you know, lots of wood and marble alongside ornate decorations and houseware. Soft incandescent bulbs flicker across the room and are placed within delicate fixtures. All these different materials come together to offer a level of tangibility that helps them feel more realistic and impressive to the eye, and it's all here, running in real time before you. When you look out across the foyer, it really sings. The thing is, every location you visit in this game is packed with detail, and it really elevates it beyond any other recent Resident Evil title. They all look amazing, don't get me wrong, but this is a noticeable leap forward. Another area I really liked is this. It's a lounge beneath the hospital. The use of stone and metal lent it a more modern appearance that really strikes the eye. When I saw this, I thought, man, if Metal Gear Solid 2 had been made today, it might look something like this. But these environments aren't just static. There's actually a lot happening in motion as well, both in terms of enemy encounters such as this, or this scene here where you're dealing with enemies within a burning cathedral. Very cool. At one point they play around with water, blood flooding down the steps here as you attempt to escape. It's a neat trick and it really leans on a particle system to help give the effect of running blood. It looks cool. All told, with Resident Evil Requiem, I believe Capcom has reached new heights in terms of visual quality. Not only does it take the crown for the series at large, it's also the best looking RE engine game that Capcom has ever shipped. It sets a new standard for the engine, and it showcases the power of using an in-house engine like this versus just settling for something like Unreal Engine. I deeply respect the fact that Capcom's able to ship titles at a regular schedule with this level of visuals, all while using their own in-house technology. It's a rare thing these days. But everything we've seen thus far in this video has been captured on PlayStation 5 Pro, and there's a reason for that. You see, this is one of the first games where the PS5 Pro release stands head and shoulders above every other console version, but it also serves to highlight how scalable the visuals are, as you'll see. So, let's get some stats down, shall we? As noted earlier, the PS5 Pro version runs at a resolution slightly above 1080p, 31 out of 60 pixels, right? But image quality with ray tracing enabled is extremely different and vastly superior to the 120Hz mode, thanks to temporal upsampling. But that 120Hz mode is key, because it would seem that what you get in that mode equals the base PlayStation 5 version. That's right, the PS5 experience is a match for the Pro's 120Hz experience.
Damn.
You get the same slightly above 1080p resolution with spatial upscaling, and there's a lack of ray-traced reflections and global illumination. As a little example, take a look at the guy holding the umbrella right here in this scene. Beneath him, with the ray tracing enabled, you actually get sort of more ambient shading, the shadow from the umbrella above. On PS5, you don't see that and he just sort of glows unnaturally in the scene. Stuff like this is all across the game. Yes, these RT features are indeed exclusive to PS5 Pro, and obviously PC, but that's another video. But what surprised me is that while those effects do make a difference, the results here are better than I expected. You do lose out on some of the visual sheen, but still, this is a gorgeous game without ray tracing, and the pre-calculated lighting is absolutely excellent. All other details are a match though. Hair strands, subsurface scattering, all of it's here. Really, the main issue here stems from image quality, which as noted earlier seems to rely on that basic spatial upscaling like FSR1, so it's noticeably less sharp than PS5 Pro's RT mode. Still, despite that, as noted, it's a gorgeous game, even without these features, which shows just how nicely it scales across various pieces of hardware, something that'll be very interesting when we get to Switch 2 in the next video. Now, in terms of performance, the results here are very simple. PS5 and PS5 Pro in ray tracing mode both run at and mostly maintain a stable 60 frames per second. It's not 100% locked, but it's close enough to call it that.
Yeah, it's impressive.
It's very smooth indeed. This street scene here right at the beginning of the game is actually one of the most demanding scenes I've found throughout my entire playthrough. And yeah, you get some dips just below 60 FPS here with ray tracing engaged.
Who cares?
But aside from this and maybe one or two other small spaces, it really is stable. In addition, the game natively supports VRR and will trigger it when enabled on a supported television, which is great for smoothing out any of those minor dips that can occur. Now, the 120Hz mode on Pro is where things get a little more variable. It aims for 120, and it largely meets this goal, but it's not perfect, and there's a lot more variance here. Most TVs capable of 120Hz output likely do at least support VRR, so it won't be a big issue, but it is something that I noted along the way. That opening street scene again is pretty heavy in the 120Hz mode. But still, with VRR, it is pretty good, but I wouldn't want to give up the ray tracing and better image quality.
Agreed.
Which brings us to Xbox. Series X is dead simple. It looks and runs exactly like PlayStation 5. You get the same resolution, same visual features, and same mostly locked 60 FPS. Yep, that means you get hair strands, but no ray tracing, along with that spatial upscaling. I'd be curious if there was enough headroom for slightly better image quality, but even as is, this is a very good experience on the Series X. Which leaves us with Xbox Series S, which is one I was very curious about. It's both how I expected, but also slightly different. You see, the rendering resolution is very low, coming in just around 720p or so, though the inventory item shortcut counts at 576p. The issue here is that it's using the same spatial upscaler that we saw on the PS5 and Xbox Series X version, but when your base resolution is so much lower, the results are really swimmy and noisy. And spoiler alert, it's worse than Switch 2. Still, it's not entirely surprising.
Damn.
What I didn't expect, however, was the removal of the strand hair system. Instead, we have a simplified hair mesh that simply doesn't look anywhere as good, which is kind of odd because the non-strand hair in Resident Evil 4 actually looked excellent. That suggests that the game's art was designed around this new strand hair system, and they had to develop a fallback for less capable hardware. To its credit, however, the Series S version runs very smoothly indeed. And even with its flaws, it is a nice looking game. The artwork does scale well. It's really just that the image quality doesn't look great on a larger display. It's blurry and smeary compared to every other version. I'll certainly be curious to see how this scales on Switch 2 and something like the Steam Deck though. So yeah, between all the consoles then, and it's rare to say this, the PS5 Pro just has a gigantic advantage here.
Good.
You get significantly better image quality, a full suite of ray tracing features, and even the option to play at 120 FPS if you desire. Really great results for the PS5 Pro. Alright, so let's start rounding this out. There's some additional points I wanted to mention before we end the video.
So guys, that's basically what this was about. We kind of get the idea here. The Series S version, like he says, the Switch 2 version is running better than that. But that's because they're using an older FSR. DLSS is going to beat that in image quality, but it's good seeing that the PS5 Pro is showing this huge difference. That's what people wanted to see, like, show me a difference, right? And we saw that also with Ghost of Yotei, but that's an exclusive though. And then a lot of other games are getting treatments too. And I think when PSSR 2 drops, we're definitely going to be seeing that a lot more. Definitely when it comes to performance and just cleaning up all that stuff like they said they would do. So I want you guys to let me know what you think about this. Once again, Capcom showing the industry how to do it. Like, comment, subscribe, keep on gaming, no matter what platform you're on. Peace.